Well, hello everybody and welcome to this new YouTube series which is going to follow me and a student through an intensive French course. So the person I'm working with, his name's John. John is the same age as me, he's 26 and he's moved to France with his girlfriend, and he set himself a challenge of learning French. He started from scratch about 6 or 7 months ago. And he's got an incredible amount of energy, very, very good memory, and all the things you really need to be a successful language learner. John is currently working in a pub in Bordeaux, so he uses a mixture of French and English in his job, but would like to improve the quality of his spoken French to obviously move on to other things later on. So this series will follow me and John working together, with me coaching him a little bit on how to improve his spoken French. Now, I should say that most of the teaching I do is teaching English to French people, so this is a relatively new experience for me as well, but hopefully you'll enjoy the experience as much as I have, and I'll be very pleased to listen to any comments you might have about the course as we go along. So here's me and John working on John's French.
So, just to recap then, so you came to France just because you met your girlfriend, or because you actually wanted to learn French?
It was always, before I met my girlfriend I was reading French textbooks and looking to learn French. But it was one of these things which just happened for 2 weeks solid that I'd stop for a month. It was never consistent. I had always too much pressure from work, too many other things going on, too many other distractions. So I was never really making any progress. It was always just dormant there, I had a little bit of vocabulary, nothing else.
And what do you find hardest in French when you try to speak it?
Configurating sentences and sounding, getting it right basically. And so I put a lot of effort into it, I do practice a lot. It's just kind of sort of getting it all together and actually being able to speak more freely and more confidently. That's what I need, essentially.
And if you had to say what were the most important things in learning a language, what would you think that they would be?
Most important is actually a real sort of reason to actually learn that language, a desire. If you don't have the desire, you're never going to have the motivation to learn a language. So with me, it's just a burning desire to be able to speak another language fluently. That's what it is, basically. Motivation, the correct environment, so of course it does help to live in the actual country that you want to learn the language of. That's a great help because you're just immersed in it the whole time. Yeah, that's about it really.
Okay, excellent. So let me try and explain the way I tend to approach these things. Now, I think there are, I should say, three key things applied to any language. And the first thing is, can I understand people when they speak? So one of the things you mentioned was that you had difficulty understanding people sometimes when they speak fast. Okay. So that's something we can work on. The second thing is, can I always say exactly what it is I want to say with the correct words? So the question of, do I have the words and the vocabulary to say what I want to say? And the third thing is, can people understand me when I speak? It doesn't necessarily have to be with a French-sounding accent, but it just has to be with a clear pronunciation. That's all you have to have, just clear pronunciation. Trying to imitate native speakers, if you can do it, it's a good thing, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is, when you speak, do people understand you? So those are the three things that we're going to be working on.
Okay, so the first exercise I asked John to do was to read aloud from a text. Now, the reason I asked him to do this was I wanted to hear how well he could pronounce words, not only the basic words that he uses already, but also more complicated words that he was unfamiliar with. So really to test his whole range of pronunciation skills and to look and see which areas we could work on. So here's the first pronunciation exercise.
What I want you to do is I want you to read it, but pronounce it in a way that you think, to your own mind, sounds like French. The way that you would, if you, for example, if you heard your girlfriend pronouncing it, how do you think her voice would sound? Obviously with a little bit more testosterone because you're a bloke, but how do you think her voice would sound if you were pronouncing it? That's what we're looking for.
Ok. Pour trouver un emploi à Londres, il faut faire preuve d'humilité. 8 décembre 2011, dernière mise à jour. Le centre Charles Péguy est une association à but non lucratif créée en 1954 à Londres et subventionnée par le ministère français des Affaires étrangères. Le centre aide les gens francophones à rechercher un emploi en Angleterre. Entretien avec Marine Deneau, directrice du centre Charles Péguy. Quel est le profil de jeunes que vous accueillez au centre Charles Péguy? Ce sont des jeunes francophones à la recherche d'un emploi. Certains ont l'intention de s'installer en Angleterre pour une durée indéterminée. D'autres sont à la recherche d'une expérience professionnelle qui pourrait leur servir de tremplin pour ensuite trouver du travail dans l'Hexagone. Pour s'inscrire au centre Charles Péguy, 60 livres sport en un, soit environ 70 €. Il faut avoir au moins 18 ans. La moyenne d'âge des jeunes inscrits au centre tourne autour de 22-23 ans.
So, what do you think about that? How did you feel when you were reading that?
It's not often that I would read things out aloud like that anyway. It's normally in my head. And obviously, it sounds better in your own head.
But it sounds perfectly intelligible. There's no need to worry about whether people are going to understand. If you read that out, you would understand. Let me give you an example. Have you ever taken an Air France flight before? Have you flown Air France before?
No.
Or have you flown with a foreign airline?
No.
Never flown with a
Oh,
foreign
I
airline?
probably have, but I mean recently, no.
So, or have you been at Bordeaux Airport before?
Been at Bordeaux Airport, yeah.
When they do the announcements in English, like when they do like the boarding announcements, the person who's reading, that they're reading off a piece of paper, the same as you're doing there when they do them in English.
Okay.
And sometimes the pronunciation of the English of the people who's doing it is not particularly good, is it?
No.
But because it's your native language, you understand what they're saying because you're used to hearing it. And that's the same. These are very common words, and they are things which are very easy to understand.
Now, I think it's very important when practicing pronunciation to focus on one thing at a time. You'll notice, obviously, that I didn't jump on all the mistakes straight away because that would be incredibly counterproductive because the pupil would make very, very little progress at all. So, what I prefer to do is to focus on one particular area, to work on that for a while, and then try to reintegrate it back into general speech. So in this next extract, we'll be looking at just the pronunciation of one particular sound or group of sounds, and in this case, the pronunciation of the flat E, or the E with no accent, or the E with an accent. One of the things we're going to start looking at to start off with is the pronunciation of the letter E and the way it's pronounced in different combinations, because sometimes you are getting a little bit confused with when E is pronounced as a E and when it's pronounced as a U. So if you were to read out the French alphabet, we could have had a pen that worked, wouldn't it? If you were to read out the French alphabet like that, if you were to read that in French, that would be what?
A, B, C, D, E.
U. So that's the sound we're looking for. So a lot of the time, when you are pronouncing the letter E and it has no accent on it at all, most of the time it's just what I call a dud sound. That's not a particularly linguistic sound, but it's like I call it a caveman sound. It's like it's a dead sound. So, for example, where were we looking? So we're looking for, and you know, I say that and then I can't find the one that I'm looking for. So, for example, here. So, as it's pronounced in su. Mm-hmm. So we have E on its own like that, as it's pronounced in su. So that's what we would call just a dud sound. I call it that. I don't know why I call it that. It's just a sort of a made-up word, but it seems to do the trick. So then after that, we've got E when it's combined with other letters. So we've got E with ER like that. How is that pronounced at the end of a word?
E.
E, exactly. So it's a bit like saying like that in English.
Yeah.
Same as that. Same thing. So we've got that. And then the other way that the E is pronounced is when you've got it with like that. Oh, which is on. So it's a bit like on or on and off, or something like that in English. So there's basically, in this text anyway, there's basically the three main ways it's pronounced. It's pronounced as a dud sound when there's nothing on it. When it's with an ER or with an accent like that, it's a I. And when it's with an EN like that, it's oh. Exactly. So those are the key ones where sometimes English speakers tend to fall down, because they will often pronounce a dud sound E as a E.
Okay.
So, for example, if we take a word out of the text, so we've got one example here, which is this word here.
Centre.
Yeah, exactly, centre. Then we've got one where it's now, and there's one I should add as well. Actually, well, and there's also E, R, and followed by a consonant.
Okay.
For example, like that sound there. When it's followed by a hard consonant, like that.
Vert.
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 So there, it's like air.
Vert.
So there, the sound is like
Air.
air. So you've got your ER followed by a hard consonant where you actually pronounce it,
Okay.
which is there. Then you've got your dud sound, you've got your E sound, and you've got your on sound. There are others, but these are the ones that tend to cause the most trouble.
Okay.
So we've got a word here, for example, the one that you were looking at there was this one here. So there you've got a combination of all the different sounds. So that would be, so this is again,
Indéterminé.
so we need to break it down into consonants. So we've got un, D, so that's un, D. So there it's a pronounced consonant, so it's un, D.
Indéterminé.
So indéterminé. Because there you see, it's an ER,
Indéterminé.
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 Again, so break it down. So we've got one of the E sounds here, and then we've got the air sound, which is here, and then we've got another E sound at the end. Indéterminé.
Indéterminé.
Okay. And then we've got the one with the E sound, which would be, for example, yeah? So there, that's a good one, because it's got a combination of all of them again. So here you've got a dud sound, you've got an en sound, and you've got an e sound. So that would be
Recenser.
recenser. Exactly.
Recenser.
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 Exactly. So there you've got the combination of sounds.
Dernier aussi.
Exactly. That would be. So you've got an erne there, and then you've got an e. Dernier.
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 So remember, this sound, when it's ER plus a hard consonant, or pronounced consonant,
R.
is R So,
Vert.
verte, like that, déterminé or indéterminé, and dernier, dernier, like that. So, we've got a few different combinations of sounds. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the text again, and I want you to read it again, paying particular attention to the pronunciation of each sound. So I'll put a few here just to remind you that you need to think about each sound individually.
Pour trouver un emploi à Londres, il faut faire preuve d'humilité. 8 décembre 2011, dernière mise à jour. Le centre Charles Peguy est une association à but non lucratif créée en 1954 à Londres et subventionnée par le ministère.
Okay, think about the sound of the EN sound. How's that pronounced?
Subventionné par le ministère français des Affaires étrangères.
Des affaires, so think about it.
Des affaires
étrangères.
étrangères.
What sort of sound is that? Exactly. Gère.
Étrangères. Étrangères. Le centre aide les jeunes francophones à rechercher un emploi en Angleterre. Entretien avec Marine Deneux, directrice du centre Charles Peguy.
Okay, the pronunciation of that one is Peggy. Charles Peggy.
Charles Peguy. Charles Peguy. Quel est le profil de jeunes qui vous accueillent au centre Charles Peguy? Ce sont des gens francophones à la recherche d'un emploi. Certains ont l'intention de s'installer en Angleterre pour une durée indéterminée.
Think about it again. Think about it. It's more of an open sound.
Indéterminée.
Indéterminé.
Indéterminée. Indéterminée. Durée indéterminée. D'autres sont à la recherche d'une expérience professionnelle qui pourrait leur servir de tremplin pour ensuite trouver du travail dans l'Hexagone. Pour s'inscrire au centre Charles Peguy, 60 livres sport en un, soit environ 70 euros. Il faut.
So we've gone through our little bit of pronunciation practice. So the next thing I want to look at is just one little point of grammar. Now, the way I tend to look at grammar is not so much talking about expressions and the names of different parts of a sentence and your pronouns or whatever. What I tend to look at it as is just a way of constructing your ideas, and a way of, if you use a certain construction, it means one thing. If you use another construction, it means something different. Now, French is can be quite complex from that in that respect, simply because the way you use certain expressions will change the meaning of what you're actually trying to say. So I heard you talking a little bit about the past. So you use the basic past tense quite well. So the basic past tense being with using the verb avoir and then using the past form. So if I was to write down a sentence, for example, I'm so used to teaching French people English, I write most sentences in French. So if I was to So, could you say that in French?
Ouais, je pense.
Okay, so let's hear it.
Le dernier soir, j'ai travaillé dans le pub.
Okay, so how do you say last night?
Le dernier soir, le nuit dernière.
La nuit dernière, you could say that. If you say le dernier soir, it means the last night in the sense of the last night in the sequence of nights.
Ah, okay.
So if you want to say last night is hier soir.
Hier soir.
Hier soir. So
hier soir, hier soir, j'ai travaillé au bar.
Okay, j'ai travaillé au bar. J'ai travaillé au pub. Okay.
Au bar.
Now, what about if I was to say
Hier soir.
what about if I was to give you that?
La semaine dernière, je suis allé au Londres. Je suis allé à Londres.
Je suis allé à Londres.
À Londres.
Okay, good.
La semaine dernière, je suis allé à Londres.
I'm writing it in French, I shouldn't. What about if I was to get you to say that?
Le mercredi dernier.
Mercredi.
Mercredi.
The pronunciation from just now. Dernier.
Le mercredi dernier, j'ai resté à la maison.
Okay. So.
Non, pas. Ouais.
So we've got our past tense in French. Now, what do you know about the past tense in French? What can you tell me about it? Well, when we talk about any kind of action in the past.
Talk about a specific action that happened in the past. One unique occasion that happened in the past.
And what's the difference between the way the past tense is used in French and the way it's used in English?
Good question.
So, for example, in English here, if I was to say, I worked at the pub. Now, if I say, I worked at the pub, what's the difference between that and I have worked at a pub? If I say, I worked at the pub or I have worked at the pub, what would be the difference in English between saying those two sentences?
So, I have worked at the pub. That's like you had done something. You have
done it.
I can't explain that.
So, if you say I have worked at the pub, it means I have worked at the pub at some point in the past.
Yeah.
But we don't know when.
Right.
If we say I worked at a pub, it means that at a specific point in the past, I worked at a pub. So in English we have two ways of phrasing it.
Right.
In French, they only have one way of phrasing it. So they use the I have part for both.
Right.
Which is why sometimes French people make the mistake of saying, last night I have gone to the pub. The reason they do that is because in French, they only have the one part. They only have the bit with have. So, as you said, last night I worked at the pub. Hier soir, j'ai travaillé au pub. C'est bien. J'ai travaillé au pub. Je suis allé à Londres la semaine dernière. Now, do you know which verbs are used with the verb in French être and which verbs are used with the verb in French avoir? What's the general rule that we apply to it?
So the verbs that are used with être are normally verbs of motion.
Okay.
So you've got, I think it's like 16 or 17 verbs.
Okay.
Être. And rather than using avoir, you would use être with these 16 verbs.
Okay.
So you use the je suis, tu es, il est. And
Okay.
past participle.
Okay. So, can you name some of the verbs that you would use être with to pronounce in the past tense?
Yes.
So you used one is aller.
Aller. Good question. I'm blank. I remember the actual. There's a way Mr. and Mrs. Van der Tramp.
Mr. and Mrs. Van der Tramp. Yeah, we used to have that at university as well. Or Mr. Tramp's van or something like that. Yeah.
So there's aller, rentrer. Devenir, is that one or no? Devenir?
Well, devenir is actually it's what we call a compound. So it's venir, the verb venir with a de in front of it. So
Okay.
same thing.
Mine's gone completely blank.
Okay. So the best way to remember them is in pairs. Well, the way I learned to remember them was in pairs. So aller, so the opposite of to go is to
Let's come back.
so
Venir.
aller, venir,
Venir.
to
Aller,
arrive.
venir. To arrive. To partir.
To arrive, c'est arriver.
Arriver, oui. Arriver et
Partir.
partir. I know to be born and to die.
To be born is naître.
Naître et
And to die is
mourir.
mourir. Okay. What about to go up and to go down?
Ouais. Monter et descendre. That's one really blank.
Okay, but in any case, but generally verbs of motion or a change of state will generally be with être. Okay, so if I was to say, if I was to ask you to say, for example, last Tuesday I went to Paris.
Le mardi dernier.
So generally when we talk about a day in the past, we don't have to say le mardi dernier, we just say
Mardi dernier.
mardi dernier.
Alors mardi dernier, je suis allé à Paris.
My girlfriend arrived in Bordeaux this morning.
Ma copine est arrivée au Bordeaux ce matin.
Okay, the boss of the pub has left.
Le patron de pub est parti.
Okay. What about if I was to say 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I went to Spain.
2 semaines avant, je suis allé en Espagne.
Okay. What about if I was to say I went down to Bordeaux last night.
Je suis allé à Bordeaux hier soir.
Or I went down to Bordeaux. What about if you want to say I went down to Bordeaux?
Down.
Yeah, I went down to Bordeaux.
Je descends. Non. Je suis descendu.
Je suis descendu.
Je suis descendu au Bordeaux hier soir.
Okay, good. Fine. So, you seem to have a fairly good grasp of the way that the past tense works. So, can you now tell me... Alors, tu vas me parler maintenant de ton histoire encore une fois en français, donc tu vas m'expliquer comment tu es venu en France, pourquoi tu es venu en France, mais je veux que tu te serves d'un maximum de construction passive, de construction au passé.
D'accord.
Je veux que tu utilises un maximum de construction au passé.
Alors, donc, j'ai déjà fait mes études en ingénieur civil.
So, just one thing.
Ingénieur.
Now, so again, what's your sound? Ingénieur.
Ingénieur.
Ingénieur. So, I...
Ouais. J'ai passé 3 ans comme en travaillant comme ingénieur. Ingénieur. Mais c'était un peu ennuyeux pour moi. J'ai envie de changer ma vie un peu. Donc j'ai voyagé en France, Espagne et Italie en vélo pendant 6 mois. C'est pour ça que utilize the French, utilize the past tense. Donc après mon voyage, je suis rentré en Angleterre et aussi j'ai travaillé un peu. J'ai vendu les champs, le fields, the land.
Tu as vendu les champs?
Tu as vendu les champs en Brésil.
Tu les as vendus?
Ouais.
You were selling fields?
Non, fields, land.
Ah, ok, tu as vendu des terrains.
Des terrains.
Des terrains de construction, c'est ça?
Des terrains de construction, ouais, c'est ça. Donc, j'ai vendu les terrains de construction pendant 8 mois. Et après, j'étais en contact avec ma copine, Ophélie, qui m'a dit que pourquoi tu lost it answers là.
Pourquoi quoi? So try and get around the problem.
Ouais, elle m'a dit viens en France pour en vacances avec moi. On va passer une semaine, faire quelque chose. Donc à ce moment-là, je n'ai pas le temps pour faire ça parce que j'étais très occupé avec mon travail. Donc elle m'a visité ici à Londres. Et après j'ai décidé de
Think about the word again. Think about it in your head.
J'ai décidé.
So you've got the words here. J'ai
décidé.
J'ai décidé.
Décidé. J'ai décidé de partir en France pour apprendre le français et améliorer mon français.
Et qu'est-ce que tu fais maintenant sur Bordeaux?
Maintenant,
qu'est-ce que tu fais comme travail?
Maintenant, je travaille au bar, dans un bar anglais. C'est pour gagner un peu d'argent et améliorer le français, parler avec les gens. Je m'entends.
I expect
to do something. S'attendre,
Je m'attends à ce que, mais ça c'est quand j'attends à ce que quelque chose se produise, mais tu comptes rester? Tu comptes rester? Je compte.
Je compte rester de passer 2 ans ici.
2 ans?
2 ans, 2 ans ici. Minimum.
D'accord. Et tu es content à Bordeaux? Tu te sens content?
Je suis très content à Bordeaux. Je suis très content à Bordeaux parce qu'il y a beaucoup de faire. Mais aussi il fait chaud.
Okay, now the way I like to approach listening comprehension is to take a very short extract from a video from ordinary French media, not a particularly dumbed down video, but just from ordinary French media, from YouTube or from any other kind of public source, and to take maybe just 40-50 seconds and to really analyse second by second the content of that video. And it's amazing the amount of vocabulary and expressions you can gain just from doing a really short extract. So this is what we're going to do in this next section.
De la France en surface. Par contre, sa population est double de celle de la France, soit environ 130 millions d'habitants. Alors je vais vous parler aujourd'hui du Japon, que l'on connaît relativement peu. Peu d'Occidentaux connaissent le Japon. C'est un pays que l'on connaît à travers ces catastrophes de Fukushima, des tremblements de terre. On voit aussi ces groupes de Japonais qui sortent des bus à Paris, tous avec leur appareil photo, mais finalement on les connaît peu. L'objectif de cette présentation est donc de les connaître un peu plus. Je vais vous parler de Senpai, de Bukai, de Tatemae, des Mawashi, d'organisation sociale, comment travailler avec eux. Voici les quelques clés à connaître avec les Japonais. Tout d'abord, il y a deux systèmes de communication avec les Japonais, ce qui est dit et ce qui est pensé. On parle alors d'attitude une, la vraie attitude, ou l'attitude tatemae, l'attitude de façade. En réunion, face au public, on sera toujours en attitude tatemae. Et puis le soir, quand on sortira avec les Japonais pour dîner, par exemple, on pourra être en attitude une, c'est-à-dire la vraie attitude, le parler vrai. Cela ne se fera qu'après, bien sûr, plusieurs rencontres avec son partenaire japonais. En ce qui concerne la notion du temps au Japon, eh bien attention à être 10 minutes à 15 minutes avant l'heure de votre... En ce qui concerne la notion du temps au Japon, eh bien attention à être 10 minutes à 15 minutes avant l'heure de votre rendez-vous. Dans tout ce que vous allez faire avec les Japonais, respectez totalement le temps. Lorsque vous avez un rendez-vous à 9h, soyez à 9h moins le quart, en salle avec lui, et cela sera apprécié. Bien évidemment, le retard est considéré comme non professionnel. Aujourd'hui du Japon, que l'on connaît relativement de la France, soit environ 100. Le Japon est un petit pays qui fait la moitié de la France en surface.
So what I want you to do is I want you to, I'm going to play a little extract of the thing we just listened to. And what I want you to do is I want you to repeat in French what it is that you heard him say. So don't try and translate it, just repeat in French what you heard him say.
Bonjour, bienvenue au pays de l'or, de la...
Bonjour. Bienvenue à pays.
Bienvenue.
Bienvenue à pays. Dehors.
Au pays.
Au pays dehors.
So, yeah, it was almost there. It's actually au pays de l'or.
De l'or.
Au pays de l'or.
Ouais, de l'or. Ouais, de l'or. Stupide, ouais.
Unité de l'honneur. Bienvenue au Japon.
Bienvenue au Japon.
Le Japon est un petit pays qui fait la moitié de la France en surface.
Le Japon est un petit pays qui fait
la moitié. What does it mean, la moitié?
half
De la France
de la France.
en surface.
Ah ouais, d'accord.
Par contre, sa population est double de celle de la France. Soit
Par contre, la population, c'est le double
De celle de la France.
environ 130 millions d'habitants.
109 000
Environ 130 000
millions,
pardon.
103 millions
d'habitants.
Alors, je vais vous parler aujourd'hui du Japon, que l'on...
Alors, je vais pas aller aujourd'hui au Japon.
Je vais parler au Japon, je vais parler
Sur le Japon
du Japon.
Du Japon, d'accord.
On connaît relativement peu. Peu d'Occidentaux connaissent le Japon.
On met ça.
Alors, je vais vous parler aujourd'hui du Japon, que l'on connaît relativement peu.
Que le connaît relativement peu.
Que l'on connaît relativement peu.
Ouais, que le connaît
Peu d'Occidentaux connaissent le Japon.
Mais ça, regarde.
Peu d'occidentaux.
Peu d'occidentaux.
What does it mean, occidentaux? Peu d'occidentaux.
Peu d'occidentaux. Ah, je sais pas.
Occidentaux is people from the West, Westerners.
Ok.
Quelque chose de occidental means from the West.
Ok.
So un occidental is what we would call in English a Westerner.
Ok, non occidental.
C'est un pays que l'on connaît à travers ces catastrophes de Fukushima, des tremblements de terre.
C'est un pays que le connaît une catastrophe.
On connaît, use the word that we did the other day, qu'on connaît à travers, through,
ouais.
Fukushima,
Ouais, à travers Fukushima.
c'est catastrophe.
C'est catastrophe.
And you used another expression, les... Now, I'm not going to say this,
Tremblant. Pardon.
So, because there's a couple of different
Sounds.
E sounds in there, aren't there?
Yeah.
So-
Tremblement.
That's it.
Tremblement.
Tremblement de terre.
Tremblement de terre.
And what does it mean, the tremblement de terre?
Earthquake.
Earthquakes, exactly.
On voit aussi ces groupes de Japonais qui sortent des bus à Paris, tous avec leur appareil photo, mais finalement...
Long. On voit aussi un groupe
De touristes japonais qui sortent du bus avec leur appareil photo.
qui sortent du bus avec l'appareil photo.
Sortent du bus avec leur
Got off the
appareil.
bus with the cameras,
Hmm?
which got off the bus with the cameras.
Yeah. Avec leur appareil photo.
On les connaît peu. L'objectif de cette présentation est donc de les connaître un peu plus. Je vais vous...
L'objectif de cette présentation,
De les connaître un
c'est
peu
de les
plus.
connaître un peu, d'accord.
De les
Connaître
connaître un peu
un peu plus.
De les connaître un peu plus. Now, take that. Now what I want you to do is we're going to go back again over the
parler
video,
de sympa.
and I want you to, there's a pen, just tick them off as you hear them.
Bienvenue au pays de l'or, de la dignité de l'honneur. Bienvenue au Japon. Le Japon est un petit pays qui fait la moitié de la France en surface. Par contre, sa population est double de celle de la France, soit environ 130 millions d'habitants. Alors je vais vous parler aujourd'hui du Japon, que l'on connaît relativement peu. Peu d'Occidentaux connaissent le Japon. C'est un pays que l'on connaît à travers ces catastrophes de Fukushima, des tremblements de terre. On voit aussi ces groupes de Japonais qui sortent des bus à Paris, tous avec leur appareil photo, mais finalement on les connaît peu. L'objectif de cette présentation est donc de les connaître un peu plus. Je vais vous parler de
You're a
sympa.
bit early with that one.
Ah ouais, ouais, connaître.
Okay. So, one thing we can notice is that quite often when people speak fast in French is they swallow certain words, don't they? So whereas I would say tremblement de terre, they say tremblement de terre. So you don't even hear the de sound. It's kind of like a tremblement de terre. They kind of, it's more like a stop with the tongue. But to be honest, as a non-native speaker, it's not a good idea to try and speak like that,
No.
because all that's going to happen is you're going to get tongue-tied. So I find it's much better and much clearer to pronounce each sound as you say it. I tend to find it works better that way. Okay. Now, I'll move us back onto this one here. So there's two of us here. Now, so what I want you to do now is we're going to go through it again, and I want you to actually translate each part for me, what you think it means. Okay.
Welcome to the, for me that's the country of gold.
Yeah. Okay.
Bienvenue au Japon.
Welcome to Japan.
Le Japon est un petit pays qui fait la moitié de la France en surface.
Japan's a small country which is basically half the surface area of France.
Par contre, sa population est double de celle de la France,
However, the population is double in France.
soit environ 130 millions d'habitants.
There's around 130 million inhabitants.
Alors, je vais vous parler aujourd'hui du Japon, que l'on connaît relativement peu. Peu d'Occidentaux connaissent le Japon.
So today I'm going to speak about Japan, which I know a little bit about.
Okay, now there's a little nuance there, because je connais peu. Now, if you say je connais un peu, it means I know a little. It's the same as in English.
Okay.
The difference between saying
Okay.
I know Japan
So
a
I know
little.
little about.
Exactly, but then he's saying, because he's not saying un peu, he's saying peu. So
Okay.
I know little about.
Okay, so the next part having analysed the French video in great length and noted down all of the vocabulary that John didn't know, was to move on and to take a video in English from exactly the same domain, on exactly the same subject more or less, and try to use that vocabulary in translating from English into French. So this is a very good way of retaining new vocabulary, is to try and put it into use as quickly as you can. If somebody just tells you a word, you might remember it or you might forget it, but you've got a lot more chance of remembering it if you put it to practical use as soon as possible after you learn it. So this is what happens in this next segment.
Again, same thing. We'll do a small extract and I want to repeat it in French.
In this video, I'm going to share with you some Japan budget travel tips.
Bonjour. Dans ce vidéo, je vais partager avec vous
some Japan budget travel tips.
Okay, quelques conseils de voyager au Japon.
So you can see Japan without going broke.
To see?
Pour voir le Japon sans perdre d'argent.
Sans perdre d'argent ou sans casser la tirelire. Il y a une expression en français, on peut dire sans casser la tirelire. The tirelire is the piggyback, without breaking the piggyback. Sans casser la tirelire.
Sans casser la tirelire. Sans casser la
Let's get
tirelire.
started.
On commence.
Hi guys, I'm Marcus Sortias from
Salut tout le monde. Je suis Marcus Sortijas.
streetsmarttraveler.com and it
It's the name of the website.
Ouais, à www.streetsmarttraveler.com.
So when you say this in French, we say les www.streetsmarttraveler.com. Les
www.streetsmarttraveler.com.
this video, I'm going to share with you some Japan budget travel tips.
Dans ce vidéo, je vais vous montrer quelques conseils de voyager en Japon.
Okay, good.
It'll help you save a lot of money.
Je vais vous aider à garder beaucoup d'argent.
While I won't make Japan Thailand,
What did you say? I won't make Japan Thailand?
Yeah.
Okay. It won't make Japan Thailand?
Yeah.
Okay, right, so
So think of a way of getting around, if you don't know how to say it exactly, how would you say it?
it won't make Japan Thailand.
How would you... No, so, it won't, or it is not going to.
Ça ne va pas, ça ne va pas rendre Japon comme Thailand.
Okay, so not perfect, but again, you made the you've got round it. So this is one thing that you need to do. If you ever get stuck and you can't think of the word,
So I get sometimes I get just like
a block.
a mental block. It's just like
So that's where just try and keep your flow going. Say something around, just about right, just to keep your flow going.
okay. Alright, come on, let's do this shit.
They will help it make it more affordable for you.
Ça va aider faire plus Easier.
They're more affordable.
Ah. Ça va vous aider à avoir en passer un temps plus.
So not plus, but perhaps maybe what about less expensive?
Moins cher,
Exactly.
ouais.
So sometimes if you don't know how to say it in the opposite way. That way you avoid the blockage.
They love my stories and my photos, and it will help it make it more affordable for you. So a couple of years
back.
A couple of years back, I did a long backpacking trip around Japan. I went to Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, Nara, and Hiroshima, among other places. After I got back, I wrote a...
After I got back?
Après, je suis retourné.
Okay. How would you say just the return of somebody?
Le rentre. Le return.
Le retour.
Le retour.
So, après mon retour.
About my travels on my personal travel blog.
J'ai écrit à propos de mes voyages. So I wrote about my...
J'ai écrit à propos mon voyage, mon séjour, mon voyage. Et
on my travel blog.
Sur mon blog de travail, de voyage.
At www.marcusgoesglobal.com.
www.marcusgoesglobal.com.
Good. Okay. So again, doing the French to English bit is more about understanding French people when they speak. Now, doing the English to French bit is about just finding little expressions to help you keep going. So the thing to do is, improvisation is a good thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as the people understand what you're saying, and quite often, when you say something that's not quite right, a French person will reply to you with the correct answer, or the correct way of saying it. So, to save money. Now, the way we say to save money, c'est faire des économies.
Faire des économies.
To faire des économies is to save money.
Okay.
Just an expression. To faire des économies is to
Vous
save
aider à
money.
faire des économies.
Vous aider à faire des économies. So you can transformer quelque chose en quelque chose. To transform one thing into another thing. Donc je ne vais pas transformer le Japon en Thaïlande. Ou je ne vais pas rendre le Japon comme la Thaïlande.
Ouais.
Afterwards you've got affordable. The word for affordable in French is abordable.
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 And when you want to use the construction in English ago, we use
Il y a
il y a.
quelques années, ouais.
Il y a. Il y a means ago, but we put it at the front of the sentence. So, il y a some years, or a few years, il y a quelques années. So, and après mon retour, after my return,
Après mon retour.
and when we want to say about something, we say à propos de. I don't even say, we sometimes use that in English sometimes, don't we?
Yeah.
Apropos.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a song somebody sang with that in. And, same thing. And, other than that, it was okay. So, take that, and again, we're going to go over it again. We're going to do another bit of consecutive translation, and try and use those constructions again this time.
Hi, in this video I'm going to share with you some Japan budget travel tips.
Bonjour, dans ce vidéo, je vais vous partager quelques conseils à propos Japon.
Budget.
Ouais. About budgeting, right?
So, some budget travel tips. What does it actually mean, budget travel tips?
Okay, so yeah, right. So I need to. How would I say that?
So it means to visit Japan
Yeah, of course.
without spending a lot of money.
Exactly.
So how would
Okay.
you say that?
Et je vais vous partager quelques conseils à propos faire des économies.
Okay. sur les voyages au Japon.
Le voyage au Japon.
Au Japon.
Au Japon. Au Japon.
So you can see Japan without going broke.
Remember the expression?
Ouais.
Sans casser la tirelire. Sans casser la tirelire.
Le tirelire.
La tirelire.
Ouais. So, shit. What did you say again?
He said, so you can visit Japan without going broke.
Let's get started.
Pour pas mettre
Connaître le Japon.
pour connaître le Japon.
See Japan.
Sans casser casser le tirelire.
Sans casser la tirelire.
Without going broke. Let's get started.
So how do you say let's get started? What's a more colloquial way of saying let's get started? How do you say let's go?
Let's go. In French.
Yeah. What have you heard your colleagues at work
On
say?
y va.
On y va, exactly. And you can use that here as well. Allez, on y va.
Allez,
On y va.
On y va.
C'est parti.
C'est parti. Oui.
Alors maintenant, on va revoir un petit peu ce qu'on a fait ce matin, mais on va commencer à parler en français parce que je veux t'entendre parler un petit peu plus, parce que là on a fait la plupart des explications, on les a fait en anglais, donc là on va commencer à faire un petit peu plus en français. Donc j'aimerais que tu me relises ce texte, encore une fois, en faisant attention au son que je t'ai mentionné là tout à l'heure. Donc le E, le R et le E. Donc le E qui est le son de base, le E de base, le E accent aigu et ou le E avec le ER, et après tu as le ER plus consonne qui fait R. Okay, donc tu vas me relire ce même texte et je veux t'entendre bien prononcer les sons qu'on a vus tout à l'heure.
Alors, pour trouver un emploi à Londres, il faut faire preuve d'humilité. 8 décembre 2011, dernière mise à jour. Le centre Charles Peggy est une association à but non lucratif créée en 1954 à Londres et subventionnée par le ministère français des Affaires étrangères. Le centre
Les affaires
étrangères.
étrangères. Les affaires étrangères, exactement. Ouais.
Des affaires étrangères. Le centre aide les jeunes francophones à rechercher un emploi en Angleterre. Entretien avec Marine Deneux, directrice.
Marine Deneux.
Directrice du centre Charles Peggy. Quel est le profil de jeunes qui vous accueillez au centre Charles Peggy? Ce sont de jeunes francophones à la recherche d'un emploi. À la recherche d'un emploi.
La recherche. À la recherche.
Donc ce sont de jeunes francophones à la recherche dans l'emploi. Certains ont l'intention.
Certains ont l'intention
de s'installer en Angleterre pour une durée indéterminée.
Good.
D'autres sont à la recherche d'une expérience professionnelle qui pourrait leur servir de tremplin pour ensuite trouver du travail dans l'hexagone, l'hexagone, pour s'inscrire au centre Charles Peggy, 60 livres sport en un, soit environ 70 euros. Il faut avoir au moins 18 ans. La moyenne d'âge des jeunes inscrits au centre tourne autour de 22-23 ans. Nous leur donnons des conseils pour trouver un emploi à Londres et cours d'entretien individuel, quelle que soit leur formation et leur parcours. Ces jeunes entendent comment la volonté d'améliorer leur anglais.
Okay, that's fine. Right, we'll stop there. Good. So, that is the end of lesson 1 in John's intensive course. The course is going to go on through most of the month of August, so there'll be several episodes, so please do keep coming back to watch the next episode. If there's anything you'd like us to cover, if there's anything you'd like to talk about, if you have any tips, any comments, anything people think I could be doing better, anything that people think might work better, then please by all means put a comment underneath the video. I'm very happy to read your comments. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you. Bye bye.